Hello and welcome to the Silent Evil Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I am Cameron.
And we are definitely going back in time to a real old school, hardcore survival horror game from ye old golden age of the horror game era. But we went with Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, technically part 4 in the Alone in the Dark series, though it's kind of a reboot all at the same time. And it's one of those games that I know I've had sitting around forever, and I've started up many a times, but I've never gotten all the way through it, or probably that far, really, at the end of the day. But for many, many years, I've said, like, well, I just want to beat this game. I want to go through the whole thing. I want to say I've done it. I want to have the whole experience and everything like that. So we decide, we're like, yo, let's pull this game out, and give it the old college try and go the distance.
Yep. Yeah, and you wouldn't I'd say that based off how difficult the game is, like I would would have never seen myself like ever completing this game as is, like I'm glad we got to play it on the podcast and it gave me a reason to play through it, but Jesus, this game is hard.
Well, I do kind of like, because I do notice that, like, when we do a game on the podcast, there's some of those video games that, like, and that's probably the thing, is throughout the years I've thrown this one on, and I'll do that thing where you'd go, you get a handful of hours into it, you're like, man, this game's just kind of kicking my ass, like everything like that. Like, I'll come back to it, and then you never do, and then of course, when the time comes, you have to restart. But what makes it kind of nice on the podcast is it sort of forces you to keep going. Because I even felt like that when we did Crow Country, because I was like, if I probably would have played this without any podcast thing, like there's a part like just kind of in the beginning where it's like, I just died like 3 times. It's like I probably would have been like, I'll put this down, I'll come back to it later, and then probably never would have. But when you have to play it for the podcast, it's like, okay, let's go. And I think that's what Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare sort of needed, was it needed me to like forcefully have to go through this game and really explore it and so on. And a lot of times I think you actually do get a lot more out of a game too once you kind of force yourself into it. It sounds like a weird way to go about it, but
Yep. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, by the end of like completing the first run of the game, I'm very glad that I have it now. I'm very interested in continuing like playing it. Like I need a little break from it for the moment being, but like, no, I'm super glad that I have it now. And I mean, like I've been looking forward to this podcast, like to actually dive into it and see what this game's all about. So
yeah, and it's one of those ones where it's like, we went through this thing and checked it all out. And it's strange because, it's one of those games where, like, when you start this game up, there is no difficulty choices or anything like that. It just, you hit new game, it just throws you in there. And you're like, good luck, where, at least I guess you would say Resident Evil a lot of times gives you like, okay, you got a couple choices here. We're not just going to throw you on the hardest mode first and foremost.
Right.
We'll give you a little bit of options and so on like this. Like this game's like, no. You're here. You're going in, and that's where I do think this game is not probably, you would never want to recommend this to someone's like first couple survival horror games.
Sure.
I think it's that one that like you need to, like, once you've played your fill of Resident Evils and Silent Evils or Silent Hills and Dino Crisis and all that kind of stuff, then you throw this one on when you just want a little bit more of that classic atmosphere and classic era feel, But if this was the first one you ever threw on, you probably would never come back to survival horror games.
No, definitely. And like everything we played up until this point is it has prepped me for this or whatever. But I was commenting early on, within my first like hour or two of playing the game, like texting Spence and being like, coming off of like Dino Crisis 2 with like how streamlined and how just like easy that game is to like just move forward, constantly shoot, constantly move forward, grab the key, open the door, go to the next, to this, to like a million locked doors and like very vague, like item descriptions and like things like that, and like trying to figure things out. Yeah, it was a trip. It was a massive trip to like come into this type of game, coming off the heels of DC2 anyway. But yeah, I think it's super cool. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, what's a fun thing too is because I was looking up just some other videos of people talking about this game and so on like that, and I think a lot of people were kind of confused a lot of times because I would see people talk about like, oh, it's a Resident Evil ripoff. I'm like, Did you not know that there was Alone in the Dark 1, 2, and 3 that literally kind of invented the style of survival horror, like as we sort of know it? Like literally, go back and play Alone in the Dark 1. You'll go, oh, it's got camera angles.
Right.
It's literally got tank controls. It's got pre-rendered backgrounds. It has the entire plethora of kind of all the stuff. You're solving puzzles, collecting keys, grabbing guns, shooting monsters. It's all there. You know, I just think what this was that like they took that break in like 95 or whatever after Alone in the Dark 3, which the weird thing about the Alone in the Dark sequels though is like they're actually each one's like a mobster one and then the other one's like a Western themed one. So like they really changed the stories up a lot. But I think the thing is they saw Resident Evil and all the other games, Parasite Eve and so on like that come on out. And they're like, no. Like those guys are taking all our money. We got to show them who's the OG around here. We're gonna come back with Alone in the Dark 4, the new Nightmare, and bring the Alone in the Dark elements, try to like update it with some, the things that have paved the way with Resident Evil and Silent Hill and all that stuff and kind of give it the old shot and whatnot. And I feel for the most part, there is some jank to the game. And I think that's the best way to sort of say it. It's like, it's not really a perfect one. I look at, if I'm looking at this time period and really just in general, I look at Resident Evil 3 as probably the pinnacle of survival horror play mechanics.
Sure.
I think that's the one that plays the smoothest. It's like they got the controls dialed in really well, the flow of that game, and just, it adds things like the dodge mechanics and the auto aim is actually pretty, the Dino Crisis 2 is pretty close too. I think the chaos sometimes is what makes that one, a little bit more like, you'll aim at a raptor that's 100 miles away instead of the one that's running right at you.
Right. Exactly.
But beyond that though, it's like I really do think because Resident Evil 3 is actually more dialed in control wise, I think, than Code Veronica. Because technically Code Veronica actually is before. It's one of those weird ones. Like it started before Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 3 kind of comes out afterwards, though it feels like Code Veronica's number 4. And weird enough is Alone in the Dark is totally the most tail end of the PlayStation era. I mean, it literally came out in I think what was it, August 2001?
Is that when it dropped in?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when it was. So, well, the whole thing is that one, you already had Code Veronica come out on the Dreamcast, and it's been out for like 6+ months by this point.
Right. You
have the PS2 that's already been out for like, I guess Code Veronica's been out for like a year now that I think about it, because it came out in 2000. So then you have the PS2 that's been out for 7 months. You know what I mean? And this game's coming out when like only a couple months away from the Xbox and the GameCube coming out. So it's in like a real tail end, like weird period where, it's coming out like almost the ending edge of both PlayStation and almost like the golden age of survival horrors.
Right. It felt like I think just like as a general overlay of like the totality of the game, it definitely felt like a rushed thing to capitalize on the success of Resident Evil. And there are so many similarities to, like more particularly like Resident Evil 2, in my opinion. Gunplay and whatnot, yes, I agree with you with RE3 for sure. But like the way that the game like even just starts with just like you hit the start button, bam, you're dropped into a cutscene. It's just like overlaying everything. It feels very much like the start of RE2, to the point of like choosing your character, right? And then you have like the boy character, you have the girl character, or whatever, and then you choose those two things. So like all of that, just felt like RE2 to me, like leading up to it or whatever. And I noticed that the game like wants you to default as Carnby. It wants you to default as the male character or whatever. So I went the opposite. So I went with Aline on my first run. And just immediately right off the bat, between static cam and, pre-rendered backgrounds and, just like movement, tank controls, inventory management, things like that. Just like right off the bat, I just started feeling like this is like, whereas Resident Evil came from, using ideas and things of Alone in the Dark in its original sense to now, like it's almost like the roles reversed, to an extent. And it felt like, I don't know, it's just using so much of the DNA of Resident Evil. I just thought it was super interesting,
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I do think, because you mentioned Resident Evil 2, I'm pretty sure that this game probably started in development when Resident Evil 2 came out. That, like,
That's
you
what I
could
was thinking.
totally tell that it was one of those ones, like, that game comes out and they're like, we need to get Alone in the Dark going. And I think, because I haven't been able to find like a copious amount of like behind the scenes stuff on it, like where it says like when it really did, and like, because I have a feeling this was one of those games that probably just took a handful of years longer than it, they probably wanted to come out in like 99, and then it took till 2001 to finally get there, and so on like that, because that's what it feels like. It feels like if this would have came out like right after Resident Evil 2, it would have felt like, oh, it fits perfectly in there. But once you've had Dino Crisis 2 and Resident Evil 3 pretty much, and even Parasite Eve 2, like those three right there already have come out, and now it feels like, oh, and even Code Veronica, there it is. Though strange enough, though, is like when I was looking back, I sent you that review that I found of GamePro, which I literally have that actual issue too. I remember it. I'm like, I know it's in here, and I had to keep searching through different ones. I'm like, okay, where it is in the month, and it's funny because this game got like really high reviews, because I think it still lied in that golden age. It's only like a year or two later that people start to really like bag on survival horror games, but like in GamePro, I think they gave it a 4.5 out of 5 for fun factor and everything like that. I saw a couple other, even IGN gave it a high score, and I think Electronic Gaming Month, maybe not Electronic Game Monthly, I think the Electronic Game, no, not EGM. What's the GameStop one? Game Informer, I think, gave it a high one. I don't think Electronic Game Monthly, I don't think, likes survival horrors, because I think they gave it kind of a low one, if I remember correctly. Because that was the thing, is certain magazines are always kind of more biased. I know GamePro always was pretty high on the survival horror stuff. So, but it was kind of cool seeing that, because it's like this game was at the time period looked upon really well. Though you look at it nowadays and you just kind of compare it just to the handful of ones out there, and you could see that there is kind of some jank and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny about the time of this game coming out, because I never heard of it before. When you mentioned it, like whenever that was, a handful, like the month or so ago, when you first mentioned Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare, I'm like, there was a fourth game? Like, what? Like, I had no idea. Like, I had no idea that this game even existed. So maybe it wasn't, maybe there was so much hype around Capcom and the RE series and Dino Crisis and all these other things that maybe this one just wasn't marketed the same. Because I feel like it seemingly based off, because like the PS2 version only came out in Europe, correct?
Yeah, and that was because we were talking about that before on literally I think the Dino Crisis episode. We're like, was there ever like a PS1 game that literally had a PS2 release? And we're like, we can't think of one whatsoever. We can think of Dreamcast ones, and we can think of Dreamcast to PS2, but not the other way. And then lo and behold, this game actually ended up the next game we talked about. But like, I never knew that either, because it's like it was only released in Europe. I don't even know if it was released in Japan on PS2, to tell you the truth. I think it was just
a European release on PS2.
Yeah, I'll say this. Sometimes, like back in the olden days, Europe was always a little bit behind. They were almost like 6 months to a year behind the US. So if the US was 6 months behind Japan, Europe was like another 6 months, which is weird to think about that they would be like, you'd be like sitting there like, in England just waiting and be like, oh, I got to wait one more year longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Good thing there's this Alone in the Dark to hold me over.
Yeah. No, I'm just like, I'm curious, like where they marketed it to, especially here in the States. Cause like I said, I've never heard of it before, like I'm familiar enough with Alone in the Dark as like a franchise, but never heard of this specific title before. So, coming into it was big surprise to me, and especially like the fact that it's like on Steam, I'd expect this to, which we did verify. I mean, it is on GOG, I guess, too, but to run across it on Steam was pretty interesting. And it actually works, like I'd actually like to kind of talk about the PC version real quick. So just right off the bat, you had mentioned that the original release when it first dropped on Steam, like had weird problems that you almost had to like mod, to get around, for the game to actually operate properly and whatnot.
You literally had to mod to get the game to boot up. That was my first experience of a Steam game that literally did not start, because I bought that game in the initial version of the Silent Evil podcast. So Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare was going to be one of our coming up episodes, because me and RJ back in the day, we started this game up and just never got far enough into it, because this one just flowed around that same time period as Code Veronica. So when I got that, I bought the whole set or whatever. It was like the Alone in the Dark like 5-pack on Steam for like $7 or something goofy.
Right.
And yeah, that game literally was like, I've seen games that have issues, but I've never seen a game that just clearly didn't even boot. And then, you had to read one of those like Steam forum people that's like, oh, here you go to this site and you download this and you put this patch in here and all this stuff and bada bing, bada boom, there you go. And yeah.
Mess around with the files and all that, But this go around, I mean, like, I don't know, it worked really well on my computer. It just booted first time, like everything worked totally great. The unfortunate side, and the reason why this episode has taken a minute, or at least one of the delays, was that my computer's pump decided to go out. And right in the middle of a hectic travel schedule with work and whatnot too. So but what was cool about it was like it gave me the opportunity to play on my Steam Deck. And originally it worked fine on my Steam Deck. I did a flight to Atlanta and back and played it the whole way there, the whole way back. Everything worked fine. And then a handful of nights, into me using that Steam Deck, I'm playing Balatro, and I decided that I'm just going to suspend that program in on the Steam Deck or whatever and boot Alone in the Dark. And then when I booted Alone in the Dark, it's just like the game loaded with just no textures. Like everything was just like that very, white background with just, just pixel. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like,
it looks like the T-1000 out of like Terminator 2.
And like the game's operating normally, like it's playing. I'm running the character around. It's playing cutscenes. It's doing all this weird stuff. Still 2 days, Spence. I still can't get that thing to work on my Steam Deck. I can't get it to work. I don't know. I've removed the game from my Steam Deck. I've have reinstalled it. I've done like all these things, and like I just cannot get it to operate normally. But after I fixed my pump on my computer, I went back to that version, and then obviously completed the game that way. But yeah, so just weird thing with the Steam version, I suppose. And then just the PC version in general, like there really isn't much of anything to speak of. Like it's just a straight up port. I didn't see like any real graphical settings like whatsoever. It's very much just brightness. It's like the one thing you can control in the game. Which, speaking of, this game is dark. This game is so dark, especially playing on an OLED monitor. It's tough to see anything, and I know that the game's already developed to be dark as is. So
yeah, exactly. No, this one's super dark, and that's literally I played it on the Dreamcast version because I got kind of afraid that like I would get like halfway into the Steam one and then something would crap out on me. I'm like, you know what? Let's go with the tried and true Dreamcast version and so on like that. Which technically I think the Dreamcast version is really just ported to the Steam one, so that's all it is. So they're kind of identical in a sense, or ported to the PC version. But yeah, no, this game is super dark, but they do give you a kind of a cool feature because they have this flashlight that's in here, which is what kind of makes it a little bit different. And I did see a little thing that talked about the way that this game is they pre-render 2 different variations of each little location. So there's a bright and a dark version of it.
Right.
When you shine your flashlight on it, you see the dark version normally, but then when you pull the flashlight out and you shine it, it literally shows the light version. And I do think that this is sort of the reason why, because the game has just like a fraction, like super, super quick, but it's there just enough load time in between each camera angle. Not like a load time that stops it, but you just see there's like an ever so slight hiccup, where it's like pop up, like each time, that you probably wouldn't see in Resident Evil or anything like that, And I'm pretty sure when I read that, I'm like, I bet you that's exactly the reason why, because it has to load 2 pre-rendered backgrounds instead of 1. But it does make for a cool thing because you have the flashlight and you can use the joystick, to shine around, which I always thought about. I'm like, boy, that must suck if you have a PlayStation 1 with no DualShock. Because
it is hard to try to aim with the D-pad for sure.
Well, I don't think you can even aim. Can you aim with the D-pad?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you could spin around, of course, but you can't go up and down, can you, with it?
No, you totally can, because if you pull your trigger, and you have your gun out or whatever with the flashlight, then you can aim like that. You hit up, down, and you like it's jank as hell. Like it doesn't work the same way that the analog stick would, but yes, you can. But you're very much secluded to Well, I guess you have omnidirectional, I suppose. There's 8 directions, but good luck trying to hit an angle, with the D-pad. So,
Yeah, well, because the only reason I said maybe it's the Dreamcast version itself doesn't have that, because the Dreamcast one, literally the joystick is just like it's just left to the flashlight alone,
really,
and then the D-pad is just the controller. So I just kind of wondered that, like on the PlayStation one, I was like, can you aim? I'm like, now the PlayStation one does have the extra couple buttons that the Dreamcast doesn't have, so I was wondering if that was the case too.
So the reason why I know this is because of the one freaking puzzle that you have where you have to specifically aim the flashlight to do the M pattern, or whatever. I couldn't figure out, and I was like, oh, and that's when I realized that you can use an analog stick, and it's a lot more smooth that way. Because I'm like, how are you meant to do this?
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, that puzzle already is kind of tough with a joystick anyways. Like, it took me like a good 12 tries to get it right.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm like, I'm glad there's no zombies coming out at me right now, or else I'd be pretty screwed, because I'm sitting here trying to fumble this stupid M symbol.
Yeah.
But
that is super interesting. I was very curious how they did the way that the flashlight works, because it's very like, it's just like a circular shape or whatever, and as you're moving around and looking at things and you're aiming around and whatnot, it's just showing that circle like on the wall. So it's cool that it renders both at the same time, to get that type of effect. So
yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Well, and that's the thing, is there's a lot of really cool stuff in this game, like that flashlight feature. Just the graphics themselves, like, they are pretty darn dialed for the tail end of PlayStation. It's like they're really good looking graphics and so on like that. And technically, I'll say this: the Dreamcast / PC version looks really crisp and clear. When you do play the PlayStation one, because you can go on PS5 and actually. They have it on there, which is kind of strange. It's not like we only have like 20 PS1 games, and we chose Alone in the Dark. Well, then again, they threw Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare, the Game Boy Color version on the Switch store. I thought that was the strangest one. It's like, yeah, the Switch has like, on the Virtual Console has maybe 20 Game Boy games, and they're like, we got to have Alone in the Dark as one of them. I think what they're really trying to do is they were trying to promote the new Low in the Dark, whatever, 6 or 7, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
I think so. They just said, like, here you go, throw this on your virtual console, throw this on your virtual console.
Yeah.
We're trying to get as much hype for it and so on. But but it is cool. You can actually play it on PS5 really easily too. The downfall is you're playing the PS1 version. It'd be cooler if you had the Dreamcast one, because it's not bad, but it's just once again, you got like the 320 resolution instead of having Dreamcast 480 resolution. It makes a huge difference.
Well, it's one thing that I'll comment about with the I'm even looking at just like some of my screenshots I had taken. Like, this game doesn't suffer from what I have complained about quite over the last few episodes of just like way too high res, like character models and whatnot. Like the character models actually look good in this game, and they blend in well with the pre-rendered environments, which is maybe because of like not having like PC specific, tools to like upscale or anything like that. Like, again, the game just feels like a straight up port, which I think is good. So even though I did play on PC, it very much felt like I was playing the original PS1 version, which is good. So, but
yeah, that's probably for the best too, that it kind of does that, because you just have like that character that looks way too highly detailed for their pre-rendered backgrounds that are at 320 or maybe 480 for the Dreamcast kind of variation. But but yeah, no, there's a lot of neat features in there. And then I guess kind of jumping into how this story sort of unfolds as we sort of started off is you got 2 main characters. You got Aline and Carnby, and Carnby, I think, is literally the same. I think that's literally the dude's name in the first Alone in the Dark, but for some reason, Lean's not the same. And the other one, I can't remember her name. She always just looked like she was like Hillary Clinton and like the original Alone in the Dark. That's what I always felt like you were playing as when you chose that character. And that game takes place like the 30s or whatnot. And this one's kind of like, it's like the modern kind of version of it, though it's got kind of its own thing going. And these 2 guys, pretty much, it's kind of an interesting dynamic because they're thrown together on this kind of mission, but each one has their own sort of separate things. Like Edwards kind of has this, like, I almost want to say he sort of is like investigating for like his lost friend. And then he's also got this government official guy who wants him to go out and find these tablets as well, almost like all of Metal Gear Solid-y, especially with the ending. And then Aline's there as an archaeologist, and she's sort of searching for remnants of her father / this other kind of professor and so on like that. And they just happen to be on the same plane flight on, for some reason, Halloween, because if we're going to go out to a spooky manor, it might as well be on Halloween, which ironically even comes back to like a puzzle later in the game. I thought that was just, I was like, oh, wait a second, I know what date it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things that just like fall into place like way too conveniently in this game, but I digress. We'll get to it.
So they're going out to Shadow Island. They're on like a plane ride there. It almost even kind of reminds me of sort of like Jurassic Park 3-ish in a sense, and then something terribly goes wrong on the plane, and then they have to bail out, and then they end up parachuting down to this manor. Of course, each one lands in a sort of different section, and then it kind of goes like, who do you want to choose? Know, and then I chose Aline as well in my first play round too. I'm like, and then you got Aline or Carnby. And the cool thing I will say about those, when you do play through both of them, is this game's actually quite different in their two different storylines. It's not like, some games where, like Resident Evil 1, I love Resident Evil 1, and don't get me wrong, it's, that, for the most part, you kind of do a lot of the same stuff. It's just you have two different character interactions more than anything else. Chris interacts with Rebecca, Jill interacts with Barry. For the most part, you do 90% of the same stuff, where this one's like, oh, it's actually, you interconnect and cross, but you actually go to a lot of different places and so on like that. And I think that's kind of cool. You fight different bosses and all kinds of stuff there. I mean, even more different than Resident Evil 2, even, I would say.
Yeah.
Just including the fact that I guess Resident Evil 2, you got two different variations, an A and B story. Yeah. But so you start off, and then generally, if you play as Carnby, you kind of get a little bit more actiony. He's got more guns to start off, and of course, Aline has nothing at first. She just walks into like some old lady's like bedroom and stuff. Like the lady's not really even that phased. Like, if you were up on like the 4th story and someone just walked in through your window on a rainy night on Halloween of all things, yeah. You just like Aline just walks in, it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Don't mind me. I just parachuted in.
Excuse me.
The power must be out. You got 10,000 candles surrounding about you. That must be a fire hazard.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And talk about like just immediate creepy. I think it's like the number one thing that they nailed. Because I definitely split this game up into more or less 2 sections, but almost 3, in terms of like its major set pieces and whatnot. The manor, the first part of this game is S tier, like style survival horror, in my opinion. From your first landing on the rooftop to the conversation with Carnby or whatever, and like they very much like, automatically just like throw into your head like light is a big deal in this game. And it really goes from like Carnby being down in the woods versus her up on the rooftops or whatever. And you play this cutscene, and granted, I've only seen it from Aline's perspective so far, but basically say like, shine your flashlight and wave it around, and like they do that, and you can see it like in the game and whatnot. So like right off the bat, it tells you about light is an important feature. To going through that window into that old woman's room or whatever, and just immediately she's just like this, just creepy, like what are you doing here, young girl? And blah, blah, it's just like, it's very stereotypical, but it just puts you on edge, like it just kind of like turned my stomach of just like, God, like she's gross. Like, like, what is this, Yeah, pretty good, very, very interesting, like character introduction, right off the get-go. And then immediately, like past that, it's just like you talk to her, you turn around, there's a thing on the carpet, and it's like this little serpent, snake thing or whatever, just pops up, and it's like a ghost type thing, and the game's like trying to teach you at this point, like just shine your light at it to dissipate it or make it go away or whatever, because again, Aline doesn't have any weapons at this point, so.
Yeah, it's just like the old lady's like, shine the flashlight there. I'll take care of it. And so you shine it and it kills it. And then you kind of realize like, that's why she's got the 10,000 candles around her. It's like, that's keeping out all the creepy monsters and stuff that have come out of the other dimension. But the weird thing is like that part kind of always throws me off a bit, because it's like, okay, you shine it at that little dragon serpent thing. It goes away and dies. You're like, cool, that must be how I kill things with Aline. And then you go to the next like room or whatnot, and there's these like stupid like walking like plant monsters that got these long tongues that get you no matter what, and you shine the light at them and they sort of jump out of the way, but they more just kind of move out of it like they're kind of pissed, and then they just still attack you and so on. I'm like, well, obviously can you kill anything else with that flashlight realistically? Yeah, I didn't think so either, but like I felt like it sort of misleads you there. I mean, I guess it tells you that light will be it because you can go with those stupid tongue plant whatever demon things. You can go flip the light switch on them and go like, take that, you little bastards.
Yeah, and then they go away forever. Yeah, I don't know. It's I think like more so than anything, I mean, the light is definitely a deterrent, but I didn't notice it kill anything else because shortly into the manner, playing as Aline, you get this pistol, and then the game starts dropping a bunch of weapons at you, as you progress. So no, I don't think that the light does anything else other than show you things, outside of that one scene, so.
Yeah, because you could shine it at them and they'll sort of hop to like the side and they don't really get that. You almost feel like they would run away or something like that, but they don't. They just kind of jump to the side and then they can still attack you because they've now just strafed you.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's just those like annoying little creatures at first, which at least the upside is like, once again, playing with the light, physics, I guess, of the game is you can flip switches on, it'll take out those things. Of course, there's parts later in the game where things will flip the light back off on you too, just to, either add some enemies, annoy you, kind of scare you, and so on like that. But when you do start off as Aline, you get in this area and there's like literally like 30 doors all of a sudden. And I will say, something that always has kind of bothered me in certain video games is like, don't put a door there if I can't actually go through it. I always think that's kind of like why? I mean, Silent Hill does that. This one has a lot of these doors where like they're sealed. It's like, okay, do I get a lock for it? No, it's just there.
Right.
Or even in just like other games too, it's just like don't put a door there for like aesthetic reasons. If you can't open it, just make it a wall.
Yep. I think I had a text to you within like my first night of playing this of like, there's just so many locked doors. Like there's just doors everywhere, dude. And like, and really like trying to wrap your head around the level design that early on with that amount of doors. It makes sense later on in the game because like when you get deeper into the manor and you're like unlocking doors and you're like the level's looping around on itself and you're like slowly building this mental map in your head of like what the manor is and how to get around it, then it starts to make sense. But that early on, it was just like, I don't know, kind of like a shell shock to see so many doors because it's like I'm, in survival horror mode in my head. And it's like, I got to remember all of this. I got to remember this door and where that connects in this hallway and things. So it's like it's forcing me early on to try to remember level design, whereas I felt it could have been a lot more natural with like similar to other titles within the genre, slow leaking you into, like here's your first room and like there might be like 2 doors, like in this one room or whatever, and this door is locked but this door is open. That's easy to remember, whereas this game it's like, no, you start off in your first room and there's like 5 doors and it's like, it's just like, oh my god, just way too much. Yeah, no. It's like door over, and then it's like okay, one room has 5 doors in, and then you go to the next room, it's like got 4 other rooms. It's like, geez, how many doors are there all of a sudden like this? And the strangest part about it is really like out of like the 4 or 5 doors in the area, only like 2 of them work. It's that's the weird thing, and you'll find some keys and so on like that kind of get you going. And once you kind of get your bearings, it makes more sense. The weird thing is, I will say, is you have the map, and I know at some point in the game, you start seeing yourself on the map. Like, so you can open it up and it literally shows your player icon, where you're looking and everything like that. But for some reason, the manor, if I'm not mistaken, is that one doesn't show you for some reason. I don't know what. Maybe it's just like you put in disc 2 or whatever, and it, like for some reason that feature unlocks. I don't know, but like that was one of those ones I kind of wish that was there in the beginning, because those make a big difference when you can pull the map up and at least you go, okay, I know where I'm going. Is the map? So I was actually looking for it towards the end. Is the map an actual item that you pick up, or do you just have it by default? Because I never found a map, and I was never able to open a map that I can remember.
Yeah, I think on the Dreamcast version, because it had less buttons, the map was always there. So you just pressed, you had to press pretty much I guess Y for some reason. Dreamcast had you had to make up for you had to press Y.
Open your menu, right?
Well, you sort of did, but Dreamcast had like a double button thing. So you pretty much had to double press buttons to get to stuff. So you pressed like Y twice and you went into your normal menu. You press Y, then you press X, you went to your map, and you press Y, then you press A, and you went into your radio. Because I want to say on the one version, L2 is your map and R2 is your radio or something like that, or vice versa.
Okay.
So you might have just been missing that button, which that must. No wonder that you had even a harder time because that map was so dang important.
Well, that's what I was saying. Is like, it took me forever, dude, to do anything in this game just because I was trying to remember. So, because the radio thing was the other thing that wasn't working. So you actually got me curious now. I'm gonna have to load it back up after we're done with this and see. I'm just curious if maybe my triggers weren't working. Or maybe they weren't mapped.
I'm going to say this because there is something about certain older PC games because the controller that they were made for was the Sidewinder, which only had 6 buttons because it was like a Super Nintendo controller. I bet you, you would think it would just have that same Dreamcast output if that was the case, but I wonder if that was the kind of case because I noticed that like you'll pull up certain games from like the late 90s or something like that, and yeah, the controller will work for the most part, but the triggers they never work. I always notice that because it's like that was a little bit more modern day feature.
Oh, okay, so maybe that's what was going on because I never had a map the entire time I played.
Oh gosh, I was gonna say no wonder that like because I like lived and died by that map because that was there. Really? And then the bummer thing too is because I'll say this: the radio feature is actually kind of a nice one too that they throw in here because you can pull that radio up if you get kind of lost, and a lot of times the other character will give you sort of a hint or a clue, and you're like, that's right, I forgot about that. Let me go run over there.
So I was able to use the radio, but I had to do it through the menu. So I had to open the menu, click on the radio, use, and then Aline would pull it up and use it or whatever. But that's why I was asking if there was like a physical map in the game or not, because I didn't see it within the menu itself. Nor did I pick up an item of a map or whatever. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out again.
Yeah, it's literally was at least on the PlayStation and Dreamcast. It's just a button.
Okay, well, I will tell you. Not having a map, like I know this game pretty well at this point. Like I know like all the map areas and how to get around them, so that's one positive, I suppose. So
yeah, that definitely once again seems like what would make it so difficult.
Oh yeah. Well, it really was hard. The one thing that slowly but surely, like as the game progresses, I'd say your first hour, if you're not utilizing your health very well, if you're not utilizing your saves very well, I could see how you can get in trouble like pretty quickly early on. But as the game progresses, man, like the amount of items that you get are just unreal. Like I think I've finished the game with 52 save tokens or something stupid. It was like 50 some odd tokens and like just crazy.
Yeah, no. They definitely. It's weird because it's like the game starts off kind of hard. Like it's like the beginning's really hard, and then once you start getting going, it's almost like the difficulty sort of drops. And then even as you get farther in the game, like it's still like a challenge, but they just like keep giving you more and more stuff as the game goes. I mean, even to the point that you get to the end of the game. And you're in the final, like the third act or whatever, and they're literally giving you unlimited health and pretty much unlimited ammo, realistically, because you're picking up crystals and filling up like magical Native American water to drink, and like you can keep reloading it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting how that game kind of goes, like with its difficulty curve. It does like the exact opposite of a Mega Man game.
Yeah,
where it goes, it starts off real hard, and then it's like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. But I will say the save tokens, I actually kind of like that style that it is because you can literally save anywhere with them. So it's like if you had your ink ribbon and you had a portable typewriter, and it's like, which is kind of neat because then it's like, especially if you're playing it over again too, and like, okay, I know there's a boss right here. I can save literally the date or the door right beforehand. Boom, there we go, and go in there. Check it out and so on. At least I know I'm kind of safe and so on like that. Yep. And it is kind of cool that they do give you a bunch. And I do kind of like also too that everything's simple. Like they just give you med packs. There's no different. It's not like Dino Crisis 2 where there's for some reason 4 different med packs you get that you really do not need that many different variations of them. Right. I like it's just one straight med pack. It pretty much heals you about halfway. So if you need to heal more, you use 2 of them.
Yep. Yeah, there was definitely there was a couple points in this manor section where like I ran out of health, like I ran out of health regain and whatnot. I started to run out of bullets. I started to run out of these things. The game does a very good job of hiding its items within its levels. there was another text conversation between Spence and I, pretty deep on into the game, where I started asking about like, hey, does the flashlight, is that the indicator that makes things like kind of twinkle and whatnot, within the levels? And because like sometimes I would just see it by default, and other times it wouldn't, and I couldn't tell if it was something where like maybe I did just have my flashlight out and maybe it just touched it, a pixel of it or something that made it start to flash or whatever. Because there was so many times where especially after I started using the guide a bit deeper on into the game after getting so frustrated with it, where it's like, no, there's 3 health packs in this room, and it's like, where, and like, if you didn't have your light out and you weren't like really scanning around the rooms with your light, like you would miss so much stuff, So it does a very good job of hiding things for sure.
Yeah, that's I noticed that too, because there's one of those ones, because I pretty much always have my flashlight out, so I think that like it would, but I didn't realize that a lot of the stuff, because I just was running around rooms literally clicking A, because it's like I knew that sometimes I'd just run across stuff and things like that. But you almost have to be very precise with that light. But it is kind of a cool feature. It's like, oh yeah, you use the light and you can find stuff. But sometimes I'd be sitting there being like, I know there's an item in here. Where is it at? And you're flashing everything and so on like that. Because one thing is about this game, for some reason, you have to be so dang precise when it comes down to like shining that light on an object for it to twinkle. And especially when it comes down to doors and other items, like, I mean, if you're not like right on it, like, it's one of those ones, like, it's like, I'll sit there and be like, especially if there's a couple enemies behind you and you're like, click, come on, pick that up, or go in the door. Or there's even times where I would get turned around a handful of times where I'd literally look at my map and I'd be like, there is a door or like, an entryway right here. I can see it on the map, but I cannot seem to get it. And I'll just be sitting there, click. Come on. Just slightly moving a lean or carring me back and forth. And then finally it's like, oh, it clicks and then it goes through. Like, that's one thing I think. That little bit of jank of trying to get it just so precise.
Well, and that's because that led to so many frustrating deaths for me. Like especially those little plant monster things that you were talking about. They like, I think that they're 3-legged or whatever. They're like just this weird, I don't know, creature thing that just like that has like liquor capabilities, where it like shoots this tongue thing out at you and it like pierces you and whatnot. And they're fast too. They're tiny. They're little on the ground or whatever. They're so fast. And in combination with the problems of the preciseness that you need to open a door or climb on the thing or do the, like interaction items, like interacting with anything in this game, you have to be so precise. And yeah, it led to so many times where like I would get, pierced, by a couple of those liquor looking things or whatever, and just be like, what the fuck, because like I'm like on the door, I'm facing the door, I'm in proximity to the door, like just can we add like 10 pixels to this, leeway, please, like lots of frustrating things with that, especially deeper on into the game. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but in the castle area, like with the broken down walls where you got to climb the walls and whatnot,
Oh god, that wall was and it's just one of those ones, like if those enemies are once again the stupid licking creatures, those are, I really will say that is probably the worst creature in the game. There's other creatures that might do more damage, but those ones, there's so many of them, they're so annoying. They always reappear all over the place. And and that wall, you climb up and over this wall and you have to get down one more step down. And I literally even glitched through some of that areas where I glitched through the wall, and then that just jacked it up even more. I had to reload because it was like now a lean can't even grab onto anything. But yeah, these guys are in their way, and of course they can lick you up on the wall sometimes, and I'm just sitting there. Okay, finally, come on, up and down, and then you finally find a ledge to jump off of, but. There's a fine balance, I think, when you have a fixed camera angle type game. You have your environment, that the character is in. This game does a very weird job of depth perception for me. Like there's certain angles where like you will be running away from yourself, right? I'm looking at my screen, like I'm running away from myself, and then the camera angle will switch.
on the screen where I'm watching myself run away from myself, you know, you see the object in the distance of like what you want to go grab, right? Like the crystals, for example, later on, you know. There's a really good example of you're climbing that very, very large stair set at the like tribunal thing or whatever. You're climbing up the stair set, and Aline's running towards you at this point, and you see the crystal there or whatever, and like you get within proximity of it where in that angle it's like you're very close to it, and then the camera angle switches, you know, to something else, and you're standing 10 feet away from it, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, why is it like that? You know? And I there's probably like 10 more examples I could toss out like within the manor itself, you know, based off that, because it kept screwing with me with having to touch light switches. They're typically right next to a door, you know, and like you'd be running towards that door or whatever, and you're like, where is the depth perception? Because I know that as soon as I get to that door, like the camera angle is going to switch, and then it's going to take me, and I'm going to fumble with the controls, and like, where's the light switch? Where's the light switch? And inevitably, what's happening is like you're just jamming your character into corners, just tapping A or X or whatever, you know, like just jamming the buttons, you know, trying to interact with stuff. It's really annoying. It's really annoying.
Yeah, no, that definitely came up a lot. I can even picture, so there were some med packs where you'd see it like close in the screen, and then when you'd come up to it, it'd be like not in the same position and so on, like that. You know, it definitely, I'll say the game has that feeling like if they would have put like, I know they probably would, they're like we already spent like 3+ years on this game, but like it needed like that slight bit of extra 6 months of just fine tuning, you know, and just really watching some like, you know, testers play it just to kind of, or watching more regular people play it and being like, oh, they're having a hard time getting through these doors. Let's make these doors a little bit easier to get into. Right. Oh, they're having a kind of a hard time. You know what I mean? I felt like it just needed that fraction bit more. Yeah, just to get it, because that's the one thing, and that's I use the word jankiness because I feel like that describes a lot. Like the game's really good, but the jankiness is like the one thing that does pull it back just a fraction. Yeah, where you're just like, damn it, I'm just sitting here and I'm having a hard time grabbing these items. Sometimes I can't even see the items, and because that's the thing too, is a lot of those items, you know, you'd be trying to shine and I could not find it, but then lo and behold, I eventually click A on it and then it pops up. I'm like, cool. I'm glad I didn't miss that key.
Because this is the type of game that like the things that it does well, it does very well. And this is tone and atmosphere and the darkness and like even down to like, it's a little cheesy, it's a little cliche or whatever. It's story and its characters and whatnot. It's narrative design, you know, the way that characters talk to each other and whatnot. But the things that it does badly, it fails miserably at. Like, and I think a lot of it boils down to, again, like my comment earlier about how I feel like this game was, you know, rushed in a sense. Not only like Aline's story itself, but like the game in general, I think was just trying to capitalize on like, we got to get this game out for the last hurrah of survival horror of the PS1 era and whatnot, you know? So again, I think that it does a lot more right than it does wrong, but the things that it does wrong, like just it's bad. Like it's really bad, you know? So.
Yeah, no, they're definitely glaring and so on like that. But you did kind of mention just sort of the characters and the story and so on like that. One thing I do think it actually is really good about the characters and is the wittiness and the dialogue between Carnby and Eileen, and how the fact that here's two people that have to work with each other. They don't exactly like each other, and they almost will like bag on each other a little bit here and there, but then they kind of like end up working together and being totally fine. Like, I will say it's almost like the script and everything like that, like the story is not nearly as interesting as literally any of the other survival horrors, in my opinion, like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Dino Crisis, yada, 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 Parasite Eve. It's not bad, though. It's still interesting. It's got a lot of cool monsters. It's got that Lovecraftian kind of vibe to it that Alone in the Dark has always sort of had. But the character just banter between each other and just how much kind of dialogue there is, and even just the voice acting and everything like that, is, I actually will say, is probably a little bit more top notch than all the other ones, though. Like that part's actually pretty darn. I guess I'll just say that's the American production part coming in. It's like, hey, there's one thing we can do here, Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. No, I fully agree. I love the dynamic between these two characters, and it's really what makes me want to go and actually play through Carnby's thing too, is to see it from his perspective. Because I mean, like he's just like the smooth talking badass, dude or whatever, and like, I really enjoyed it. All the banter between them as you're progressing through the game was very good. So
Yeah, you just got old, Edward Carnby with his kind of like, 90s detective looking Blade Runner-esque almost vibes and
right.
whatnot.
Yep.
And even some of the stuff too is because, the stories do like they run parallel and they do follow the general same, beginning and end and all that stuff. But the interweaving part's kind of cool, just the different stuff they go through. And there's weird stuff too that like some things, because I think once again, you mentioned how they want you to start off as Carnby 1st, and we both played as Aline first and so on like that. And so once I got the Carnby, there's some things I saw where I'm like, there's some of these details that I feel like they didn't exactly explain properly in one of them that you were supposed to get from the other story in a weird way. Like you were almost supposed to play Carnby, then play Aline, like,
yeah,
in a sense. There's just like a couple puzzles later on that like you could kind of figure out by just clicking away, but like I felt like, oh, there were some of these details that like I do not remember picking up in a file or anything like that.
Yeah.
Along the way.
No, and I'd agree, because there was multiple times, because I'd argue probably about 60% of this game without a guide, before I finally just started getting frustrated and or just like, nope, I need to get through this game, and a lot of the puzzles in the manor, like I got caught on a ton of them where like I just could not for the life of me like really figure out like what am I really supposed to do. And I think that a big portion of that is just like the overwhelming amount of length of notes in this game. There's one, dude, I'm pretty sure it's 52 pages long, and granted it's pretty blown up in large text and whatnot, but like don't expect me to go through a 52-page note and remember everything. I mean, granted, yeah, it stores in your stash and all that. Fuck all that. Give me like concise 4 to 5 page, like tell me what to do type, like. But at the same time, like I don't know, there is a lot of really cool story elements that you get out of these notes too.
Yeah, no, cool. Because the one you're talking about, I think that's the one where it gives the Morton family history. Here you go, 52 pages of all that stuff, and literally the only page you need is the very, very last one. Because the very last one, I remember it was like one of those ones when I looked it up. I'm like, oh, that's easy. You just look at those dates from bottom from the bottom to the top, and you type them all into the paintings. There you go. And the one thing I will say though is they do, because I think they gave you such big fat documents, they do the thing where they highlight the important stuff. So if you see anything that's highlighted, you're like, okay, write that down. I bet that's you that will
remember.
So I will say for the most part, I think a lot of the puzzles, like they got enough challenge in them, but they're not, I'll say they're not like Dino Crisis 1 sometimes where you're like, what the hell do you want me to do here, Rick? Are you kidding me? Like it's one of those ones where these ones here, it's like you might have to siphon through your notes a handful of times more than you'd really want to. Yeah. But at least they are kind of a little bit laid out enough where it's like it's a challenge, but it's not like god awful, like bad where you're running around the mansion forever. Sometimes it'd be like dumb ones. You're like, oh, that's it, or I'm thinking way too complicated on this, and I've literally overthought this way beyond.
Yep. Well, and like going back to like the door thing and whatnot in this, like there's just like keys that are named like the Gilded Key, and it's like, cool, where does that go? Like the small key. It's like cool, shit like that.
Well, there's one like it's like there's like the Gilded Key, and then there's the Gilded Key Small, and it's like that got me so confused for the longest time. I'm like, dude, I have the key. Like, why can I not get through this door? And then I realized it was it's not the Gilded Key Small. Like,
yeah. Come on, didn't have the right variation of it, I guess.
Those are those many things that like that's why I always say that I think Resident Evil is generally the most dialed in for all survival horrors, especially because they kind of like they might put a little bit of complex stuff in there, but everything's kind of like still like almost thought out for a little bit more streamlined user experience. Even though, you will get turned around in Resident Evil. I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but like things are kind of like, like take Resident Evil 2. It's like the diamond based off like cards. So it's a diamond, a heart, a spade, like all this stuff's like, okay, that makes pretty much sense. You go to a door, you go, you don't have the diamond key. I'm like, okay, well, you go to this other one, like, hey, I got I got the heart key. So here we go. Right. It's not like these ones that are, you could pull them up in the view, and you could turn the keys in alone in the dark, and it'd be like 2nd floor master bedroom. Like, great, wherever that is.
Right, right,
I
exactly.
don't live here. Like, how the hell am I supposed to know where this one is? Let me go run through that stupid, like, the hallways with like the zombies that always keep reappearing. And yeah.
Yep.
Which I will say, this game does have, when it comes down to scares, this game will get you pretty well, though.
I agree.
They do some stuff too that I used to always think of as being more of like an Eternal Darkness type stuff, but like it's clearly here way before Eternal Darkness, where they do like some of that sanity type stuff.
Yep.
Where I remember there's one room you walk into, and I remember just you walk into it, and literally all of a sudden it just like in a lightning flash, it shows like 9 zombies, and you're like, oh my god, and then it flashes back. It's like, no, they're not there.
Yep.
So
No, it definitely toys with the psychological horror and very very vertical slices throughout the game. That one in particular got me pretty good, because like you walk into that room or whatever, the lights are all off, and just like and then all of a sudden just like like the lightning like strikes or whatever. Sound in this game was very well done as is. Like sound design is probably one of its better like core elements, I would say. But in that particular scene, yeah, just like the lightning flash, the noise that's coming through the headphones at that point, the visual of like 9 zombies in front of you like all at once, and then bam, and then it's just dark again. It's just like oh. And again, I think that the manor is like absolutely like the best out of the 3 areas that you go to in this game, like for sure. Atmospherically wise, it's just so well done. So
yeah, no, it's cool, and there's just good scares, and the worst part too is when you see those 9 zombies, because it's like the thing about the zombies, they take forever to kill in this game. They literally take like you have to unload like the game does have a really weird ammo system. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of that, where it's like you get the shotgun or the pistol, and you're like, cool, I got 12 rounds. It's like, no, the pistol fires 2 rounds at a time. Why? They get the shotgun, cool, 9 rounds. No, it fires 3 rounds at a time. Why?
Right.
Like, it's one of those ones. Why does it like that sounds badass on paper? Like, yeah, it's a 3-barreled shotgun. Look at this thing. Yeah. But then you realize like that.
I just figured it was going to be a revolving, thing where it's just like, bam, rotate a barrel, bam, rotate a barrel. So you don't have to reload in between shots or something. That's what I figured that was going to be. But it's just like, nope, we're going to fire all 3 at the same time. Why?
And you'll be in that start menu over and over and over again. like that. That's the only thing. I thought that was kind of a goofy choice. It sounds cool, and it's one of those ones. This is how it would be kind of a fine system if it had one of those kind of modes where like, okay, you can either shoot the shotgun with just the single shots, or if you want more damage, you can shoot 3 rounds at a time.
Yeah,
that would be a cool feature.
Have an
same with the
alternate
pistol
mode or something. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, just that, because it's like one of those ones like when you have menu reloading, it's like, dude, you don't want. I have to pause it every single time and do this and look like a crazy person, reloading my gun over and over. But
well, again, like at that point, it's like the player is coming up with the efficiencies, because like you don't want to get hit, you don't want to have to burn that health pack or whatever, like you learn very quickly. Like reload animations take a long time, and there is no quick turn in this game. You can't just 180 quick turn or whatever,
No.
So good luck getting away from enemies. So you learn very quickly, like it is much faster just to hit the pause button, go into my menu, manually reload that shotgun, unpause so I can go bam, 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 or at least one shot with this gun, bam, back into your menu, reload, and it breaks up gameplay, and it's like, again, it's just kind of shitty feeling. Like it doesn't feel good, to play it that way, but you're almost forced to.
Yeah, and if the guns just fired, regular rounds, I think it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Because if you had 9 rounds in that shotgun, be like, cool, I don't have to reload that often, at least.
Right.
But yeah, you're always in that menu reloading. It is kind of cool. I will say that all the ammo is all light based, that kind of go along with the whole theme. So you got these like magnesium and phosphorus rounds, which is just kind of cool. It just makes it feel different. Like, you're shooting these demonic creatures that have come from, the spirit world or whatever.
Right.
And everything's also got that, like, it's like the creepy Native American stuff too, where it's like, oh, because you meet that Native American dude. He's pretty much just like, yeah, these guys have been tempering with, the demons of hell and so on like that. And, I tried to warn them and so on. And I'll even say, because like your main antagonists, they're like the Morton family, which 100% reminds me of kind of like almost like the Ashfords in Code Veronica, where it's just you have these kind of rich folks just literally out in their own area, own island, and they're just experimenting on people and things and tempering with the dark world and all this kind of stuff. Literally, it turns all of them into some form of monsters and so on like that you got to battle along the way.
crazy rituals and all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, because one of the first things, like, your primary objective is like, we got to collect all these statues, and there's 7 of them, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think what it is, yeah, there's 6 or 7, because pretty much it's kind of interesting because like the game kind of goes, it makes you feel like, oh, I got to get all these ones. It's like, oh, no, Carnby will get half and Aline will get the other half. And technically, if you play both stories, you'll see how you get each one of them, which I think that's kind of cool. It like literally adds up that way.
Yeah, I thought that the because it definitely just like it gives you a goal at that point, you know. Like, I'll just admit, just right off the bat, like, this story really didn't do it for me. Again, the first portion of the game in the manor, when you really don't know exactly what's going on, you know, and like you're just trying to get out of the manor for the most part, you know, I think they nail it very, very good. But once the story starts to unfold and you start to understand a bit more about like the statues and the rituals, and then you're learning about the Morton family, and you're learning about, you know, like all these things, you know, the shaman, like you were talking about and whatnot. It really kind of lost me when it did its whole like how to describe it, I don't know. It just really lost me very quickly, like once the supernatural stuff started happening, you know, like so that, but at the same token, like going back to enemy design and whatnot, like there is a ton of enemies to fight in this game, and that's very appreciative in this style game.
Yeah, no, you get a lot of cool ones. I mean, I even think about too, because like when you start off as Carnby, there's like these dogs that are out there, and you see them as Elaine too, and they have some pretty brutal animations in these dogs that like I feel like you would not see nowadays, because there's part where like you blast the dog and then it gets wounded, and so it's literally crawling on 2 legs, dragging its hind legs behind. Like, I mean, like, we live in an age now where like certain video games will have a setting where you can turn off the shooting dogs part, which to me, whenever I see that stuff like that, I'll be like, I don't know if I trust this person who turns this off, because I don't think they should be playing any of these games.
Right.
You know, believe me, when I was a young lad and I played Wolfenstein 3D as a child, it bothered me to shoot those German Shepherds, but I've become a man now. And I got no problem going into the castle and taking down some rabid dogs coming for me. It's me or them. But yeah, there's some stuff in here. And it's funny too, because I was looking through that old Game Pro again, and this game initially actually had a teen rating. It's weird because it had like one of those like know your games, and you know, like one of those things probably made for like parents to like see. And Alone in the Dark, before the game came out, had a teen rating, and then it turned into a mature, you know. And I did kind of think about it though, because when you do, there's a lot of horror stuff, and there's enough stuff to warrant a mature rating. But if I did stop and think about it, I kind of go, it is still a little bit toned down, because I don't think there's any like brutal death where it's like, oh, your character's decapitated, your character's, you know, there's nothing like that, and the blood and stuff in it is quite actually light. It's there. There's enough. Once again, there's enough to warrant a mature, but it's not as much as Resident Evil.
Well, a lot of it's just skewed by the darkness in the levels themselves anyways. Like, I mean, yeah, you can totally, like, if you're shining your flashlight around and you're like really looking, like, the game is very bloody, very gory. Like, I would say, like, there's like mangled bodies and things like that. There's especially like deeper on in the game, you do see quite a bit of things, but I think a lot of it again is just like hindered by like just how properly dark this game is. So at a surface level, yeah, 100%, like it feels like it's way toned down comparatively, but I'll have to send you some of the screenshots that I took, because like there is some pretty graphic shit in this game, you know, if you really look for it. So
there's a part you'll see it if you play the Carnby one, but like you literally, well, you get to like just 2. I'm using my Dreamcast references here, but you literally get to this gate and you open up and you walk through, and there's just this guy's body that's just mangled up in a pre-rendered design, all like he got caught up and he's all bloody and everything like that. And of course you take a bunch of health packs and ammo for
yep.
But it doesn't, it goes like, Carnby almost just says something like, I wonder what hell happened to this guy.
Yeah.
You know, just like that.
So I did see like the very first portion of Carnby's story, unless we're talking about the same thing, the guy that like is missing his arm. Like, that's
a different one, but so Carnby, I guess Carnby runs across a lot of these guys.
So, yeah, very early on, you just like run across this dude that's just like holed up in this like little shack hut type thing or whatever, and he's just straight up just like missing an arm, and like I don't remember what the conversation is because it's been a minute, but yeah. So I mean, like gore is there, but like you have to kind of look for it, I suppose, So.
There's even a part too, because when you get to, in a sense, Carnby's second part, instead of kind of going to that castle area that Aline does, he's on like the outskirts of it. So he goes to like the swamp area and these other kind of sections and stuff. And he finds the downed pilot guy from the plane in the beginning. And the dude's like crashed in the swamp and everything like that. And of course, you run in there, you take the med packs and some ammo and everything like that. And the dude's like, I can't get out. I'm stuck in here. I'm stuck in here. And you just literally just run out there like, see you, dude. And then he gets stuck into like the swamp.
So
and I had to look that up because I was like, is there a way to save that guy? And it's like, no, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
If you stay there, you just go down with it.
Yep. So I saw that clip in one of the reviews, or like one of the videos I was watching on it. I was actually curious like where that came into play because obviously you don't see that as Aline. So yeah, and again, like there's just based off that the small amount that you've explained about Carnby's story and whatnot, it really does. Like, I really do want to go and actually play through that because I know I can probably blast through it, especially with how well I know the map at this point. But no, it is cool that there's that much variation, as compared to like just very similar, like gameplay mechanics, gameplay design, levels and whatnot, where you're more or less just switching out like the actual character model itself. It's cool that there's a lot more to the game than that, So yeah, super cool.
Yeah, no, that is kind of the neat thing. I think that's one of the biggest things that stands out is like each file is one, they're quite long in themselves, all in all, but like they are quite different too. It's not just kind of like, it's like if you play like the A or B storyline of like, Leon or Claire, there's a little bit of differences, but once again, nothing radical,
Yeah.
Where this one's like, no, there's actually a whole bunch of different scenes. They kind of go through different areas. They fight completely different bosses, which is just kind of neat in themselves. Where like Aline's got like you find the one Morton guy who transforms himself in the library.
Yeah.
He turns a big old ape-like creature that's like, you shoot him there in the library, but then of course he comes back later and chases you down like the pathway of the forest and whatnot.
Well, it kind of had that in particular with Aline's story is like it kind of has the like Mr. X, Nemesis style where it's like you're getting chased by this thing, but they really didn't play into it, and I'm actually curious why, because like there could have been so much more like intensity within like the castle level, if you had this just ominous thing chasing you at all times and whatnot, and just putting that little extra amount of pressure. Because in general, I think like the castle section is where the game started to fall off for me, where it was like it's a cool area, but now we're starting to get into like this supernatural type thing, and like the story beats started falling pretty hard for me at that point and whatnot, and at this point, like I was so like, I don't know, I guess within the entirety of the manor, not having the guide in front of me, not understanding, well, now especially, like, oh, my map button was just mapped to a button that may not have worked on my controller, so like at this point in my play experience of like, I'm ready to move forward. Like I'm ready to just open a guide and just, kind of get through this. So yeah, I'm curious how you started to feel like at this point, because now we're at this transitional point of we're getting out of the manor. We've learned quite a bit about like, what's going on in the story and whatnot, weird experimentation, weird scientist type stuff, and then bam, all of a sudden we're like in this castle setting. Like, what were you feeling at this point in the game?
And this is, if you're on the disc versions of the game, this is where you get the disc 2. So it's kind of like, I probably would say the manor is maybe 60% of the game, then the disc 2 is probably 40%. As well as it was cool to see a change up of scenery and so on like that. And I'll say I'm glad that whatever his name, the Morton guy who turns to like the giant like ape-like creature, did not follow me around farther than once I got into the manor, because I'm like, I would not running back and forth from there and so on like that. Yeah, it's like one of those ones because there's some goofy stuff because you have to go find there. You find this like drill bit section thing there, and this thing has like 9 different parts you have to get. Which like figuring out how to put them together is not bad because you just do the thing where you just go in the menu and just start combining things. Oh, this doesn't combine it. Try this. Try this. Try. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
But sometimes trying to find every single one of those parts, and there's even a chest in there too that's I don't think you can unlock. It's just there, and there's some other goofy stuff and whatnot. I don't. If the castle part was any longer, I think it would definitely be a little bit more of an issue. At least it's not ridiculously long. And I'll say that the nice thing is when you play as Carnby, you actually don't even run through the castle because it goes through like the swamp area instead.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So it's like the in a sense the outskirts of the castle and whatnot like that.
Yeah.
And he's got some other little things that he kind of goes through there, but
yeah, there's just some annoyance in this particular area that we're in. I think like the combining of all, like finding all the pieces of this, super weapon thing that you need to, put together so you can blast down this was it the rock wall or the door or whatever the fuck it is. Like you need to blast down this wall so you can go to the next area. So you're like collecting all these items and whatnot. You do get a pretty good like guide, to like put this thing together where it has like illustrations and things like that. But like the one that that bugged me the worst was like, so the half ring. So you have to like the 2 sections of the half ring or whatever. Dude, it took me forever to figure out that I already had because I had like the half ring, and then like the other half ring was just combined with something else. So not only do you combine things in this game, but you disassemble things too, so that took me a minute to figure out, which was really frustrating. So once I finally had that, it's the section where you have like the radio tower antenna thing or whatever, and a timer starts. So you have to like fight a boss, like while you have this like radio tower antenna thing down. You're fighting a boss. You have to kill this boss, and then
it's not an easy fight too, or it's just got a goofy thing you have to do because I will say that's the other thing is all the boss battles in this game, like you almost feel like you're trying to make a glitch work in your favor. Yeah. Is how like none of them are straightforward. It's like hopefully you figure out how this sort of glitch or pattern works that's not really there, because this like you have this like radio tower goes up and then like this lightning bolt comes down like you're fighting like the Frankenstein's monster type thing, and so the whatever Howard Morton or whatever his name was is run around his 8 form, and then he jumps across every once in a while across this lightning bolt coming down, and you have to time it so he gets hit by the lightning bolt because none of your weapons do anything against him. And what I kind of realized is don't run. If I walk, that was like that was the way to do it. It was one of those ones where it's like, okay, just running's not working. Obviously, he's never timing out there. But I learned if I walked at that part, that was what would do it. But you're on a timer. At least you can reset the timer. But it's kind of annoying. I had to reset it like 3 times. It felt like.
Oh yeah. No, that fight in particular, because exactly what Spence is saying is like there's this circular thing in the middle of this room, and occasionally a lightning bolt will come down and strike this thing. It does give you a slight like visual indicator that it's coming. It gives you a slight sound indicator that it's coming, but really like every time so basically what you're doing is you're running around the circular thing. The creature is like jumping across this as you get across from it jumps across to you. So like when you're trying to time this thing properly, like it just felt like luck every time. And like I was getting, and again, like my frustration levels at this point were like out the roof. I'm like, I just want to finish this game, because like, this is like really bothering me. So that one very much felt luck based. And then past that, so like you finally get him to jump through the stupid lightning bolt 3 times, and then you still have the timer to where like you have the radio tower up, and you're supposed to run downstairs to go. You're supposed to like flip a switch or like turn on a power source or something. You're supposed to do something. You
got to run back to the laser cannon that you've built up.
That's right.
Blast through the rock wall, so you got to now remember how to get there. There's going to, of course, be some enemies in the way.
And it gives you 2 minutes. Both occasions that I actually made it back to where you're supposed to hook up this cannon thing, like both occasions I got there within like 10 seconds of it. But again, with how hyper precise the game wants you to be on any interactable object, dude, I failed twice because I just couldn't get the goddamn thing to put the gun in the thing, and just like it wouldn't do it, and just oh my god. And then you have to run all the way back, and hit the button again, just the 2 minutes to run all the way back. Oh my god, dude, I was pretty done at this point.
yeah. No, all the boss battles, because so you have the Morton dude you fight there. Well, if you go back to the first Morton battle that you fight him in the library, and that one's not bad because that's actually one of the few ones you just got to unload bullets on him and he goes down. Well, instead, Carnby doesn't fight him there. He fights this like flying dragon looking creature that comes up in the library. And I kid you not, the first couple of times I did that boss battle, I was like, dude, what is going on? Like, I figured out the pattern that like he does a little charge up thing, and then you go bang, bang, bang. He shoots backwards. Mm-hmm. Like, you just do it like that. But it took me a moment to figure that out and everything like that. Next thing you know, I've unloaded 100 rounds in this thing. I'm like, it's clearly not dying. And so I'm like that. So I had to look that one up. And then the guy, they like literally said, they're like, yeah, sometimes people have a glitch right here. I'm like, nice. And then I realized that, and then they talk about like, oh, if you run out of the room or I'm back, I'm like, cool. The boss battle I'm already loaded into this area. I cannot run out of the room. It won't let me. So the only thing I did find though is there was that little secret like bookcase that's like pops open and you can go in and get some stuff. I think with both characters. I just ran in there, ran out, fixed the glitch thing down in like 6 shots.
Really interesting.
But that's I mean, is I felt like every boss battle, it's almost like you're fighting the glitch. You're fighting that. There's even one like towards the very end for Carnby. There's this one creature you have to battle for his final boss, and it literally is one of those ones you have to go pick up this Spear of Destiny type thing, and it kind of hints at it because it's just there's this giant spear sitting there that's glowing. You're like, okay, whatever. Yeah. But like you pretty much have to. And I was getting so frustrated because like, you're shooting your weapons and like you have to shoot this thing so that it cowers down, so it gives you enough time to go pick up the spear, or else he picks you up and chucks you back, and he keeps chucking you all over the place. But sometimes you would shoot like the rockets, and I kid you not, they would go right through him, and you just see this rocket sailing, or Carnby would shoot over his shoulder, and you're like, are you kidding me? And so, and every boss battle was kind of like that. I mean, even Aline's at the very end, she has to fight like Obed Morton or whatever, who I think is like her dad almost, who's just mutated, like whatever. And that one too is just like I figured out there's like a timer because he's walking towards you, and it's not like you're really in that much peril in a lot of these boss battles. It's just like, what am I doing? Like you just can't just unload. I had to get him like right. He walks, boom, he stands back. He walks. You're shooting him on certain animations. It's like, and then it's so weird how some of those things are. I'm like, were they just designed this way? Is this kind of a glitch? What the heck is going on here? Again, I think it's just telltale sign of just like speedy development. I think they were just trying to get this game out on time, I think so, just did not play test, did not, because like it's funny that like my first reaction to all that for very first time playing this game is just utter frustration, and like it definitely affects the game in my opinion, but at the same time, it's like I went in with the expectation of knowing, like what era this came from, what type of genre it was, this, that, and the other. So like it's acceptable in my eyes, but like if this were to be redone, if it was being developed today in the exact same sense, like give it more time. This game probably could have used an extra 6 months, to a year, for just smoothing all of that experience over. So, but what's funny about that particular fight, where you were talking about, because I did try that where like he would take a couple, like a step forward and then you would shoot him with a grenade and he would go, oh, and bounce backwards and then like repeat the animation forward, blah, blah, blah. So I saw that in a strategy guide, basically saying to do that. Did you know, and maybe I don't know what Carnby's story is like, but with Aline, you can just run past that dude. You don't have to fight him at all. You just run past him. You go to the left. You run into the chamber or whatever. You set the head down, and it's the end of the game. You don't have to fight him at all. You do not have to kill him, because that's what I ended up doing. Well, God, that's so interesting. Because I literally killed the guy, and do you not get the cutscene then if you run past him? I didn't get any cutscene with him. Because there's a cutscene like when you kill him, And then he goes like, whoa, you know, whatever, or something like, you know, she mentions something about being father or whatnot. And then all these other creatures come out and he goes over the ledge and whatnot like that. And it's like literally a CG cutscene and whatnot. Because I would never thought, because it's like you're literally on the most narrowest little pathway across there that does not look like you could even get by him to save your life.
So that's the caveat. So in order to get past him is like basically during the cutscene, just hold up, you know, and sprint at the same time. Because as soon as the cutscene ends, you have enough time to just run directly at him and then just turn to the left, and you can just skirt right past him and run past him and go up the pathway or whatever. The reset on it, so if you miss that or if he blocks you, then you turn around, you run back across the bridge or whatever, you reset his pattern to where he's back in default mode, and then you run back across the bridge and then try to hang a left. Try it on your next run through that, because it works. It's really funny. But no, there's no cutscene of him dying. It's just, you just run into the next chamber room.
So that 100% has to be in a sense the glitch way to get past it, like you're expecting, you know. That's so interesting. Gosh, yeah, because I didn't even, because that was one of those ones where, like, you know, you after like you tried it about a couple times, you're like, okay, what the hell am I supposed to do here?
No, it's the strategy in the game specs, the strategy guides that I was reading.
Interesting. Yeah, because I just did the thing where he goes down in like, you know, 6 or 8 shots. It's actually, and I just used the revolver on him actually, out of all things, you know. But yeah, that's interesting, and that's the weird thing. It's like all these boss battles. I can't even think of it other than that one where you fight Howard Morton or whatever when he first pops out of the library. That's like the only straightforward boss battle I think in the game. I think everything else in the game is like you're trying to, once again, I call it manipulating the glitches. Like that's kind of how it is. Like you know, you're not really fighting like a true boss battle. You're just like, okay, what do I have to do to make this work?
Right. Yeah. So we kind of skipped it, but like, so coming out of like the castle-ish area or whatever, it's very it's funny because RE4 hadn't come out at this point, but it's very like RE4 in like, you know, in terms of like level design. It's like what it feels like, you know. And again, like this is the part of the game like where it starts to downfall in my mind. I think it was good that they changed locales. I just don't like the mechanics and the way that these next 2 portions of the game really went, because past the castle section, then you go into like super cave tribunal, you know, like everything's all about like the shaman side of things and like the Indians and blah 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 and the supernatural and yada yada. It feels like Indiana Jones at that point to me, you know.
It goes very Tomb Raider right there, you know. Because once again, I think, you know, not only are they throwing in, you know, some of the elements that Resident Evil has, of course, done and Silent Hill, but like what else is popular at the time period? Tomb Raider and Metal Gear Solid.
Yep. Yeah. So, it's just by this point in the game, and again, like I'll just reiterate, the manor, fantastic, S tier, golden. Like I really, really enjoyed that, and I'm glad that it is majority of the game, because by the time you get to the castle section and this like cave, you know, tribunal-ish section, it didn't do it for me, you know, and it really put a sour taste in my mouth by the end, you know, of like this ending cutscene, you know, that plays or whatever. Because really, like I read enough notes and things like that, but I just didn't really care. I mean, like you seem to know more about like the story in general, so like I think you should explain to the audience what it is, because like I didn't really care by this point, you know.
Well, so, I definitely had to sort of look more stuff up. I even used ChatGPT to sit there and talk to me about the story, because I was like, one of those ones where it was weird, because it's like there's not even, other people don't even have like videos on. I mean, this game only has a handful of videos out there, realistically, to tell you the truth. And most people, once again, like I would turn on some of them. I'm like, oh, these people don't even. I hate to sort of say they don't even really get like. I feel like either they're too young going into this, or they just weren't around it. Like even if they were like our age, they might still just not have been like playing these games, or they weren't even into survival horror. So it was kind of hard to like listen. I hate to sort of say it was like that's not going to help me like kind of, you know, there. But so no, it just has this, you know, the storyline definitely, you have the rich family, of course, that I've kind of mentioned, where they're just experimenting on things and people and opening up these dimensional rifts and so on like this. And for some reason, the shaman guy, who I don't know if he works at the the manor or what, he's somehow some way tied into like the whole Morton thing or whatever, because he's in like the photographs and so on like that,
right.
But he's the only guy that seems to know how to shut this thing down and whatnot like that. So he's like, you got to go down to this underground, Aztec looking like ceremonial area and put these statues that you've been collecting this whole time so you can shut the rift that's going to keep these shadow creatures from appearing in our world on Shadow Island, ironically.
Yep.
And of course, it does have this like Metal Gear Solid ending where there's like this like government guy, sitting in there like Ocelot.
Yep.
He's like, we need to capture these shadow creatures, turn them into soldiers. You know what I mean? The lole lule lo.
Yeah, exactly.
This
which
it feels like the way that this game ends, it has that cliffhanger thing, like, oh, there's going to be a second one and whatnot like that, and like this exact one. Then sadly, I don't think there ever was, because I think the Alone in the Dark 5 is another reboot, and then of course the new Alone in the Dark is another reboot. Mm-hmm. So and that one, the new Alone in the Dark's doing more like, it's like almost if it was a sort of a remake of 1992 with some of its own elements. But so the story there, it's like I kind of got like the gist of how everything is. Like there's definitely a lot more deeper stuff going into it. And probably if you're really into like that Lovecraft stuff, like Lovecraft's one of those ones, I know like just like fractions of that from, when it appears in other things, but I am by no means an expert. I one time paid 99 cents for like the whole Kindle collection of all his work. Never read it yet, but I had all good intentions still, So probably if you know more of that kind of stuff, a lot of these things would add up, because they got like things like there's like the tentacle monsters that come out, like the plant things that come out of the bed that you shoot like whatever the candle and it just burns it to death.
Right.
Or there was one that I didn't realize I killed it because I popped in the room and I heard something, so I fired, and it was like all I heard was something dying because I couldn't see from the camera angle, and then it was like, oh, that's what I just killed, another one of those plant things. I will say, though, once you get down, though, to that Mayan ruin looking area and so on like that, for the most part, other than getting turned around a couple times with a lean, I will say Carnby's part down there at least is pretty straightforward. You're just running through a lot of pre-rendered backgrounds. It's really weird. It's like it's like they put a lot of design into that area, but then they're like, we need to get people going. Like, don't put too much down here. Like, Aline's got like one kind of a puzzle. It's more just like goofy to figure out. You got to turn this stupid thing, pull these little like circular whatever mirrors out from these statues, and then take them and then just kind of half-ass match them. You don't even really have to know what you do. Just go into the menu. Does this one fit? No. Does this one fit? Okay, there we go. Does this one fit? Yeah, like that kind of puzzle solving. And then there's a couple parts too where it's like the thing that threw me off is there's like a left and a right path there. And it's like you go over there and a bunch of dogs just randomly appear, because that's one of the things we never really mentioned that before. But this game has like enemies will just kind of appear out of thin air sometimes. Like there's certain rooms where you can clear the room out and the enemies will never be there again. And it's like, cool. And then there's sometimes where like the zombies, why do the zombies always keep coming back? Like, out of all enemies, because those things not keep coming back, because they literally always like to put them like you walk into a door and it's like, cool, there's 3 of them like a foot in front of me.
Right in front of you.
Maybe my shotgun will take them out. Maybe it won't.
Well, and I think it's a detriment too. One massive missed opportunity for a mechanical thing in this game that they completely missed was just a quick turn. Like I think that would have fixed so many encounters. So many of the frustrations of getting hit when you really shouldn't have. So many of those things, especially like you just said. You walk into a new room or a door or whatever where there's known zombies, they are very likely going to be within a foot or two of you walking into that. And then you have to wait on Aline's, or either character, just a turn animation, just to turn back around, just to go back to hopefully be in the right fucking area to hit the goddamn door to go through it. But again, like I think a quick turn would have massively fixed a lot of the combat issues that this game has. So that's like the one comment I had about it.
Well, and this goes back to, I think because this game was once again started during the Resident Evil 2 time period, is even though granted I know that like it's been a couple of years since Quick Turn's been around, but like the Quick Turn didn't really appear till I think Dino Crisis 1 and Resident Evil 3 is the one I was saying, because Resident Evil 3 is the one that kind of introduces all like the major mechanics, even if they don't appear in other stuff. It's got the Quick Turn, it has the auto aim, even though the auto aim is in Resident Evil 2, it's just kind of a hidden feature. It's in it's got the the dodge function, which is really badass. And then even small things like creating your own ammo and all that kind of stuff. It's just like there's so many little features all in Resident Evil 3.
Yeah, I think a dodge or I don't know if this was in the original Resident Evil 3 or not, but I know it's in the remakes of these. But like the defensive items that you can get, like the knives or whatever, like one time use, but like a zombie can attack you and you can jam it into its head, and it just avoids that bite, so you can save that health. I think something along those lines with this would have drastically fixed a lot of the combat scenarios that I was in, that I had problems with.
Yeah, because that thing is the enemies all grab you a lot. And strange enough, though, that concept was only really introduced in Resident Evil the remake. That's where that like the defensive items, because it's not in anything else beforehand, at least not that I can think of. But, that would help out because, as I said, a lot of enemies grab you in this game, which is kind of annoying. Of course, those zombies, and good luck trying to run past those zombies. I tried that a few times. No, there's a couple hallways where you kind of can get by, but so many times like that, some of those rooms, it's like there's literally 3 zombies in a room that's not even meant to hold 2 people.
Yeah.
They're just jammed in there. And of course, they don't go down easy. You've got a shotgun, which, if this was Resident Evil 2, you just be like, hold on a second. Boom.
Boom.
All 3 heads gone in one shot. Yeah, I feel good about myself. This one, it's just like 3 shots per zombie because you can't aim up and down. That's another small thing, too. Because once again, it's like the weird thing about the gameplay mechanics is if this game would have came out like at the same time as Resident Evil 2, I feel gameplay mechanics wise, it fits in pretty much the same because Resident Evil 2 doesn't have a 180 turn. It's kind of got the similar things there. Yeah. But by the time it's like, once again, 2001, we have so many of these other games that are out that have a little bit more fluid playing style, and this one has still got its kind of clunk going on and whatnot. But
well, that's what I was saying, man. I really think what it boils down to is it just wasn't. It was pushed out the door too quickly. And I think another 6 months, of development time on this thing probably would be up. We'd be talking about it as the S tier game, like an RE2 or an RE3.
Yeah.
There's a lot they could do. Like I see the potential of this particular reboot itself, but obviously it didn't work for them. Wasn't as popular. They moved on to Alone in the Dark 5 and rebooted it again. So a lot of lost potential, I think, with this title.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. I do really I like it for when it's good, it's good, and when it's good, it's even great. But there is just like it's a hard recommend, I feel, for a lot of people. Like I just one of those ones like unless you really like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, you can't casually like those games. You have to really like them to like this Alone in the Dark and so on like that. And I even just want to go, okay, if we're back just towards the very end of the game there, I will say like they do kind of, once you're at the end, and I don't know if this was just thing, they're just like, let's just get you through this. We got all these pre-rendered, backgrounds. You're going to be speed running almost through this whole Mayan ruins. We're going to literally give you like, here's a shaman pack, with like, you can fill up with magic water and you can load up on these crystals and this lightning gun you now have. And you can just go through here and there's going to be a bunch of enemies in your way, but it doesn't matter because you just blast living daylights out of them or run past them if you just want to save some time. We got these weird scorpion things that kind of look like they're straight out of like Half-Life coming at you that are, and so on like that. But it's weird because it's like there's so much design in that end of the game, but you literally are almost just running through it. Yeah, there's, as I said, there's like 1, maybe 2 puzzles with Aline. There's no puzzles with Carnby at the Ascend. You just literally just go through the gauntlet in a sense of just like kill, get to the end, put that statue down, fight that stupid dude with you try to grab that spear, and then you are out of there. And the same thing with Aline. You do that one little goofy puzzle. There's some strange rooms where like the enemies teleport in that makes you feel like there's going to be something over there. There's literally nothing in those at once. I got so confused by those because I kept running in those. I'm like, there's got to be something over here. I was like, no, there's just dogs that teleport in there. And for some reason, when you leave, they can't follow you out. I guess maybe there's just too much light or something. Yeah. But yeah, you go through all this stuff in this underground pyramid zone and whatnot like that. And just it's there. I'm actually kind of glad it does go by a little bit streamlined. I mean, there's some stuff where there were some of these rooms where like I knew that there was a way, like I could see it on my map that I could get through, but man, when I was having the hardest time trying to like, X my way out of it. But
by this part of the game, I was very much in like speedrun mode anyways, like ready to finish it. The game definitely is designed to be that in this final section, because it is just nonstop tossing enemies at you. It's just like combat, move, like get to this zone, get to this next door, here's a light puzzle for you just to give you something to talk about, I guess. But, let's just move this along. It's just very much what the end of the game feels like, at least in Aline's campaign. So
yeah, and Carnby's is kind of similar. Like this is the part where the game comes kind of back together. Like it's sort of like they sort of shift a lot in like the kind of the middle, and of course they go through the manor in kind of a different backwards kind of way. But this part generally kind of the same. It's just like that, and you just kind of get to the end. You're gonna slap those statues down at the very end. You get the Native American guy to tell you what's going on, how you're gonna seal this thing off. You go through the portal. Boom, goes to a cut scene, you escape out of there. You both defeated your final bosses. You get in the helicopter, classic, survival horror style, Resident Evil, Jurassic Park, doesn't matter what it is. You get out of there. Island blows up as you're leaving, or it's getting more sucked into like another dimension, I think is what's really happening. And of course it goes from there. We get that cut scene with like the government agent guy, hoping that Carnby brought in whatever secrets he needs, so he can use this on his Shadow Moses project or whatever he's planning. But and then it literally just cuts the credits, and there's no ending screen. I know it's not a Capcom game, but I was kind of like, I kind of wanted to see what my time was. Even give me a rank. The rank's one of those ones like I don't care as much about that. I more like the time. I like to just see like how long did that really take me. Because I recorded all my footage, but that doesn't help because of how many times I restart and all that stuff. I want to know like how long did this truly take me and whatnot. And then the other kind of bummer is this game. And once again, this probably comes back down to the fact that you just were saying that it was just rushed a little too fast. It should be, but there's no unlockables. There's nothing. There's no new game plus. None of this. I mean, granted, you have both stories, but like, this is one of those games I think that would have kind of benefited from being like, you beat the game, and even just something small, like here's two things we gave you. You get that Indian pouch of water, and you get the electric gun, and now you can run through the game with that. Because that would be kind of cool for like, I can blast my way through here. I got one of the. You get multiple electric guns in the game because this game does give you like an arsenal. All of a sudden, it's like you start off with not that many guns, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, it doesn't matter. You got unlimited inventory space. Load on up. Shotgun, grenade launcher, rocket launcher, electric guns.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Like, and yeah, I mean, again, I think that a lot of my points are just going to boil back down to that exactly. It's just like the game just wasn't finished, like the way it should have been, in my opinion. Trying to think of like how to phrase this, but yeah, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, like, it's a fine enough experience. I think that they definitely toyed with a lot of really cool ideas. Probably like one of the one that we didn't touch on like terribly too great on is the difference between light and dark areas, like especially rooms that have light switches and whatnot. It plays into it enough, especially in the manner like when you get the pistol for the very first time. When you have the light on in that room, you can't see the box like where the pistol actually is, but you turn the light off, and then all of a sudden it appears. I wish they would have played into that a hell of a lot more. The light and dark rooms, and especially now that I'm understanding what you're telling me of like how they overlaid both of those things to get the light, the flashlight thing to work and whatnot. To have more of that and lean more into the psychological horror side of the game, as compared to going like towards the tail end of the game. Like I would be fine with the supernatural things if they played around more with the psychological horror sense of the game as compared to making it more action combat, towards the end. Because then that result for me is just very meh, by the end of the game is just like, I mean, if I hate giving ratings to anything, but like I'd say like a totality, like Cameron's stamp on this one is just like it's like a 6 out of 10. The things that it does well, it does very, very good, but the things that it does poorly, it's just miserably fails at it, you know. So
No, and that sounds about kind of right. I would probably myself, I think I would still roll out with like a 7, maybe just a little bit, maybe even a 6.5. Because I like when it does do stuff really good, it is cool. And you even speak of like those light puzzles. There's actually one that's in Carnby's later on. I don't know if it's like necessarily a puzzle, but there's a part where you're like in these like kind of like, I don't know if they're necessarily jail cells, but they're maybe more like holding cells for maybe even animals or whatnot like that. And kind of like his section of the castle, and they turn the lights out on you, and it's pitch black in there for the most part, and you literally have to have Aline call in and tell you when you're getting close to something or not. And of course they throw zombies in there just to top it off, but it is a pretty good like horror scene and so on like that. And maybe that's the reason why I would say my rating's a little bit higher, is because like when I played through both of them, I see a little bit more of the good and stuff. And by the time I played Carnby, I was kind of used to like I was kind of like I had my jank down a bit. I mean, I still was yelling at the screen on some of those like when rocket launchers shooting through an enemy or whatnot like that. Like that, reload that game again. I've shot 3 shots. I'm like, I don't think I'm not blasting all this, but no, it's like overall I did. It's like I wish there was some more things, like once again, like a new game plus, would have added to it. And of course, if this game was just a fraction more dialed in, I'll take the story as is, because there might be people out there who like the story a lot. I personally am one of those people that I gravitate more towards realism. So that's why I think I always like Resident Evil, because and I'll say like Resident Evil, the original games, once Resident Evil gets 4 and up, it starts to become all like, it literally becomes more fantasy. But, the first like really like 0 through like 3, even if you even minus out Code Veronica, even though I like that, but that's almost like the start of like the fantasy type stuff. Those original Resident Evils, it's like it does feel like this could kind of happen. It's more like here's this like underground research facility. You got these military people. They're experimenting on things. Things are mutating. It's not too ridiculous. Everything's kind of believable and so on like that. And I've always I like that, where it's like one of those ones like when I play Silent Hill, like I love Silent Hill. Don't get me wrong, but like. Maybe it's this other thing too, is like sometimes I never find Silent Hill nearly as scary as Resident Evil, and I think it's because it's like, let's be honest, Resident Evil, this stuff actually could happen. Silent Hill, it's all fake.
It's all in your head.
It's you know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, it's just kind of like an illusion and so on like that. And Alone in the Dark sort of fits kind of closer, I feel, to Silent Hill than it does to Resident Evil for sure, where it's a lot more like, almost fantasy kind of like stuff like that, which is still cool. Don't be wrong, I still like that. It's just, to me, it's I can't get it as like developed into the story like the same way I can Resident Evil, where it's like, well, in Resident Evil, it's one of those ones, it's like there's a lot going on. It's like I think the characters are great, the backstory is great, like all your villains, your monsters, like everything adds up in that. That's why I just think that like it's kind of hard to not say Resident Evil's like the prime survival horror, especially of the olden days and so on like that.
Right.
Where the Alone in the Dark is like is one of those ones that like maybe if you are really into the Lovecraftian stuff, you really like the kind of weird spiritual ghost demon type things, like there probably is a lot more there that you would be like, oh yeah, I mean I really dig all this kind of stuff too.
That's some of the that's like part of like my problem with it is like, because I am into Lovecraft, I love Lovecraft's work and whatnot, probably like the best like version of a video game medium that did Lovecraft well is probably Bloodborne. But this game, like I get the subtle undertones and hints of it, like I feel it, like it's definitely there, but it just doesn't tell Lovecraft's world very well, like or at least his influence into this game very well. There's a lot they could have done, and again, like I think of the potential of what this game could do, and I think a lot of it is just like it just plays into the name of the game, is Alone in the Dark. Like play with the psychological side of it, with more things within, like what is the darkness, what is this overwhelming force of the darkness, especially like it's trying to tell within its narrative, and play with that like into the actual characters themselves, of like maybe you do have like some kind of like whether it be like an actual physical meter that you see, of like, I'm going insane because I'm in the dark for too long. Like maybe give the flashlight a fucking battery mechanic. Maybe give, like there's a lot of things that you could do to really amplify this experience. And I really don't. And if you do stuff like that, I really don't think you have to pull out of the manor at all. Like I think you can totally just have the game in the manor, but have weird, like my insanity levels are getting too high and things are. And so like in those points later on in the game where, it's just spawning shit, randomly in front of you and whatnot. Like that could totally play into those, actual in-game mechanics that has like a something to actually bank off of that's physical in the game, of like your character is going insane. So yeah, monsters are going to be spawning a hell of a lot more and blah, 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 add a medical system where you have like pills and whatnot, to counteract that. And, like there's a lot of things that you could do, where this game feels like it was a very safe step for this development team to go like, what works within this genre? Let's look at RE2. Let's look at RE3. Let's look at, like things that exist already and play it very, very safe, but add our own little twist in there, with the flashlight and things like that. So again, like, that's why I'm super mixed on it, because like what is there is good, but it could have been, 20 times more. So
yeah, no. And that's at the end of the day, I'm always going to feel like that too, is like, it does kind of leave a lot where you're like, man, if it just had just this little bit more dialed in this, it could be a really high end game and so on like that. And, yeah, maybe if it was focused on that, because you mentioned all like the Sandy stuff, that's where they kind of took that is with Eternal Darkness or whatever, because that's the one game that like I used to always think of that being kind of the one that's like, oh, it kind of has that's the start where you have that Sandy meter and things start to randomly appear and the screen starts to bleed on you for no random reason, but then you kind of see it's like, oh, it does sort of start in Alone in the Dark 4. It's just it's only there. It's just there like a fraction. It's just there for maybe 10 different moments per maybe each character or something like that, where there's just, a little flash of this, a little bit of that, and so on. And yeah, you almost could have a little bit more just sort of like world building, focusing on that and so on like that. And that's also the one too that you always, even though it's cool that there is the two characters going back and forth, sometimes you kind of wonder if you put all your eggs in one basket and focused heavily on just one storyline, a Resident Evil 3. Once again, I hate to sort of go back to that. That's the one I always keep going back to, because I feel like, that kind of tells you a lot right there, that you got just that smooth, here's this one kind of flowing story. I mean, you play as Carlos for a moment, but for the most part, you playing as Jill the whole way through and whatnot like that. And if you almost kind of did that too, where either you focused on Aline, which would probably be the right way to go, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, and then you have Carnby be sort of like the guy that he's there to like help you out along the way and so on like that, and kind of sidekick along with you.
Yep. No, I agree. I very much agree. Lot of potential that I just think was just sorely missed. And again, I think a lot of that boils back down to just they were just trying to hit that window. It's the end of the PS1 life cycle. PS2's on out, and there's all these other Capcom games. We need to get this out. That's just very much what this feels like.
Well, yeah, because even if you waited, let's just say we said 6 months to a year, well, next thing you know, you'd be in 2002. Resident Evil the remake would be coming out against you. Like, how are you going to fare against that?
Yeah. No, you wouldn't have. It's just a byproduct of just coming out at the wrong time.
Yeah. So and I think it's that one too, because it's weird. Because once again, we looked back at some of the reviews back in the day, and the game has high reviews for the most part. There's a few people that didn't care for it, like anything. Sure. But like it's not just like that's like one of those games that you would have thought like I would have said like, oh, probably got like a 4 out of 5 back in the day. It's like, no, there's like some 4.5s. It's getting pretty dark. Like it's only off by like a fraction to being a perfect game. And I think just as time has gone on, and as I said, we're just retroactively comparing it to like the other games that circle around it. That's the thing. It's there. You're gonna have to put up the jank. The jank is just there. You're gonna have a hard time getting to certain doors. You're gonna have a hard time picking up certain items, even though it's clearly there. Right. And so on like that. Let alone there's just some other things too, where the bosses will have some glitches. Some things won't just die like they should die, and so on like that. One thing I did find kind of interesting, though, looking is this company that made the game, not Info Games. That's the whatever the publisher, but what the heck is that company called? I know I had it sitting here for a second, but Darkworks. They have another game that I've always looked at my whole life, but I just never tried out. But it's called Cold Fear, and apparently it's the last game they did. But that's one that like has a survival horror vibe.
Really?
It's on PS2, Xbox, and maybe GameCube. Maybe it's just PS2 and Xbox.
Okay.
But which is was once I kind of heard it was these guys doing it, I'm like, that actually makes me even more curious. I think it's on Wii. That actually might be what it's on, because I want to say there's a lot of those survival horror games where they have the Wii versions, which sometimes always makes me want to get the Wii one, because I'm like, sometimes it's like the play mechanics might be just that much cooler to have on there. But
well, I'd say for this one, I mean, so right now it looks like until March 20th, this game is 75% off on Steam, going for $1.74. Buy it. Buy it. Like, play it, because it really is. I mean, I know I was kind of down on it, you know, like especially like towards the latter half of the game, I'd say, but I think there's still a lot of value there. I think there's still a lot, you know, that like you could go and play this game and do exactly what Spence and I do, or we just like compare it to other games of the genre of the era and see like what was really this developer like really trying to accomplish with this. Even in its full price sense, it's $6.99 on Steam on any given Tuesday. Just, I would buy it. I would totally play it. And I would recommend anybody that's like a fan of this genre to give it a shot, just to see like, again, what this developer was doing in the time, in the, you know, within the genre, within the era of this game coming out, is my kind of opinion about it.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And then you can literally also, I think for like just a couple bucks more, they'll give you the entire Alone in the Dark old school pack, because that's the one I bought on Steam, where it's like it has 1, 2, 3, plus it has that fifth one that I've never played, that I never hear good things about. But a lot of times when I hear that in a game, I almost want to give it the try more. When they like, let me see. Because I almost want to, there's like that part of me in my mind that wants to play and go like, this game's actually pretty good. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know why. I want to have that feeling and whatnot.
Which one is that? Is that the Illumination?
It's called Alone in the Dark 2008, I believe. Okay. It was a 360 PS3 era game.
Yep.
You know,
that's right.
And you know, once again, those are all the games that kind of now they're aping Resident Evil 4. You know, Silent Hill did the same thing too. But I even like the Silent Hill one that kind of played like Resident Evil 4. I thought that was still kind of, you know, where everything was doing the over the shoulder thing and so on. The other ironic thing too is if you remember, there was the Alone in the Dark movie that kind of came and went real fast. I literally saw it in cinemas.
Yeah, really?
And it's actually slightly based off of this game. You know, it has the two main characters in it and everything like that. Tara Reid plays Aline for some reason.
Okay, I gotcha.
And then Christian Slater plays Carnby.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, I literally have it on DVD because I've seen it a couple times when it came out. I remember it being decent enough, nothing amazing, you know. But I remember I didn't hate the movie, like where some people talk about like it's god awful. I'm like, you know, I almost want to pull it out now because I've gotten the full New Nightmare experience and just give it another watch, because, you know, I'm just kind of interested and so on to see like what connects in there and so on.
Yeah, that was the only other comment I had. So my entirety of my play experience as Aline took 8.9 hours. So I think that can be like drastically sped up, you know, especially with a guide and whatnot. But like,
and a map.
and a map.
I really do think that now that you mentioned that you weren't able to open the map, because I lived by that map in that game. That was how I made sure I knew where I was going and so on. And because I think that's that one too. If once you give the Carnby one the full shot, you know what I mean, and go through there, it once again, like when I played Carnby, it was like I was already kind of familiar with the controls. I felt like that one kind of flowed a little bit better. I was used to like the jankiness and everything like that. And he does have some parts where you'll get a little bit stuck, of course, but not. I feel not as much. I feel like Aline is definitely maybe the slightly harder mode, you know. Even though I felt like I had more health packs with Aline. I felt like Carnby, I was always on like the borderline, like for a while there until I got farther in the game. But yeah, no, I think it's one of those games that like there's a lot of ways you can go out and get it easily. You know, you can either get it on Steam or GOG for next to nothing, and it goes on sale quite often. Of course, if you have PlayStation Plus, you can literally get it on PS4 or 5. They got it there. If you want to go really old school, you can get it on PSP Vita still, and so on. And then, of course, you know, you can either emulate it or pick up original copies of PS1 slash Dreamcast slash PS2, I guess, if you're in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck getting your hands on one though.
Yeah, which the Europe one, I think the only one major difference it sort of has is I think it's the Dreamcast one ported, but they do the thing during the cutscenes where they add a little bit of lip sync into it, which is kind of cool.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Because this is still one of those games where like the characters still have still faces while they're talking.
Yeah.
Know?
Yep.
Yep. So that's like one little feature. I don't know if they do anything else, like any other lighting effects or anything like that. I'm assuming it's probably similar to the Dreamcast, no matter what.
Yeah. Yep.
But
yeah, I'm very glad that we decided to actually play it. I do look forward to actually getting through Carnby's story sooner or later. I will do that and report back when that's all done with. But I think in general, like it's a fine enough game. Play it, if you have means of access to it, all the things that Spence just said. I think at the end of the day, like it's not genre defining, but it's got its spot within the survival horror genre of that era. And I think it's actually fairly good.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those ones, if you want to go for maybe top 10 of like the golden era games that you would go for, it sits down there at like 9 or 10. But once again, once you run through all those other major ones and you're really still like having that hankering for that PS1 era feel, it does still deliver. It still is one of those ones where you'll get the classic feel that you're looking for sure, just with the rough edges.
Yep, 100%.
But yeah, beyond all that good stuff, we'll have links in the description for all the other places you can find us at. But till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes,
and I am Cameron,
and we'll see you some other time.